Welcome back to another episode of Grizzly True Crime. My name is Grizzly, and today we're going to be looking at a case that could be connected to the Delphi murders. Remember, there's also the Evansdale murders, so if you haven't ever looked at that case, we've also covered that on this channel. I just want to bring this one to your attention again in case you've missed it in some of the live streams. I know I generally live stream, but sometimes for those of you who want like a recap or if you're pressed for time, that's what these videos are for. Okay, so there is a reason we're looking at it, right? And we're going to get into that right now. Please note that this content is for adults only. Viewer discretion advised. If you haven't yet, hit the subscribe, like, and share. So, just to recap, in case you don't know about the Delphi murders, 13-year-old Abby Williams and 14-year-old Libby German went to Monon High Bridge on February 13th of 2017 for an afternoon stroll. At 2:07 p.m., Libby uploaded a photo of Abby on the bridge to Snapchat. At 2:13 p.m., they were ordered down the hill. There was actually guys down the hill. Their bodies were discovered on February 14th of 2017, the very next day, on Ron Logan's property. Ron Logan died in January of 2022. Now, police have described the scene as staged or posed. And remember, over all the years before they arrested the suspect, Richard M. Allen, they described it that way. Staged, posed, signatures, all that kind of stuff, right? So, on October 26th of 2022, a suspect, Richard M. Allen, was arrested. He was charged with 2 counts of felony murder on October 31st of 2022. Now, ignore that next court date. We've already been there. We've seen a lot of court dates. The trial is actually scheduled to start on January 8th of 2024. Please check out my Delphi playlist if you want to catch up on all the documents and just updates and everything that's been happening in this case since I last made this presentation. But the thing that I want to show you is this, in light of Richard Allen's defense team bringing up some interesting information. Now, some people are just going, oh my word, what? And it's okay, everyone's entitled to their opinion, as am I, as are all of us. Don't fight with each other in the comments. Please do. Like the video and share it. Hashtag Abby and Libby. Hashtag justice for Abby and Libby. Hashtag Delphi. And now you can add the hashtag Bill and Peggy Stephenson because this is an unsolved double homicide too. And investigators in this case in November of 2022 were like, wait a minute, there was an item of interest found here that could be connected to the Delphi murders. So the investigators started talking to each other, and I didn't forget that. That was very interesting to me. And now with the defense coming out with these claims of Odinism or ritual sacrifice or runes being left at the scene and things like that, I mean, even if we took that with a grain of salt, is interesting, given what they said in this case. So I'm going to tell you about this case, okay? So we're just compartmentalizing for today. We're looking at this case. Could it be connected to Delphi? And why could the defense's claims hold some weight? So on May 29th of 2011 in Florence, Kentucky, Bill Stephenson was the oldest of 14 children. He came from a big family with lots of nieces and nephews. One nephew was actually suspected of the crime and ruled out later. Peggy had 1 brother and 1 sister. Now, Bill Stephenson met Peggy on a Boone County dairy farm, and they got married on August 25th, 1956. They had 2 sons, 1 daughter, 7 grandchildren, and 1 great-grandchild, and were about to celebrate their 55th wedding anniversary. Bill ran the truckers chapter at the Travel America truck stop in Florence, Kentucky for many years, and Peggy was a loving housewife. They were a very loving, giving, and appreciated couple in their community. In 2011, Bill and Peggy moved into a condo at Ridge Edge Court in the Oakbrook subdivision of Florence. Saturday, May 28th of 2011 was a bright, sunny summer's day, and it was Memorial Day weekend. Bill and Peggy had a great day with their family and friends and looked forward to attending their usual Sunday service at the Union Baptist Church the next morning, where Peggy was a faithful organ player for 42 years. Bill Stephenson, 74, was a semi-retired guy from insurance investment, and he founded a worship service at the Truckers' Chapel on Burlington Pike in Florence, just 11 minutes away. But on this Sunday, he was nowhere to be seen, which concerned everyone greatly. They were used to that routine of seeing him. People started calling the Stephenson residence, but there was no answer. A family member decided to drive to the condo to check on Bill and Peggy, and what they found still haunts the community today. There was no sign of forced entry. No one in the neighborhood heard anything, and the killer evidently stayed in the residence for several hours after the murders. The condo complex had only one way in and one way out, and their condo was at the back, which wasn't an easy target for passers-by. So again, no sign of forced entry. No one in the neighborhood heard anything, and the killer evidently stayed in the residence for several hours after the murders. Note, while they were known as very kind and loving people, they were also described as cautious and would not have let a stranger into their home or to just dish out their address. They had one bedroom, so it wasn't a place where someone could just be invited to spend the night either. A visitor would need to be buzzed in. It wasn't a place one could just casually drive around in. Now here's where it gets interesting. May 29th, 2011, the crime scene. Trigger warning. Okay. Bill and Peggy had been bludgeoned and stabbed to death. The weapons used in this crime have not been found, which is the same as in Delphi. That unspent round was found, but they haven't found, from what we know, okay, I know they searched Richard Allen's house. From what we know, they haven't found the weapons that caused the injuries to Abby and Libby. So here they say the weapons used in this crime have not been found. Law enforcement does know the type of weapon used, but are keeping it close to the vest. So if one had to speculate for a second, imagine if it was a sword or like a Viking knife or something specific. Why are they keeping that so close to the vest? And the same as the Evansdale murders, that double homicide. We don't even know what their cause of death was. We don't know what happened to those two girls. That's still unsolved. So the scene had been cleaned and staged. Every room in the house had been staged. Items were moved around. Some items were placed around the victims' bodies, which could sound a little bit ritualistic. The victims' bodies had been posed. Same as Delphi. The killer had allegedly left a signature or a message in the home. Bill and Peggy's family photographs had been tampered with and arranged in a way that suggested that the killer liked certain people and disliked others. Investigators described the scene as the scene that the killer, wanted found, and not the crime scene. Detective Coy Cox said there were things that were maybe on end tables or up on shelves that were changed, altered, moved, turned over, marked on. So if you think of marked on, one might think of runes, and that would be coming from the deep dive I did after looking up the names of the people that the defense had named and looking that they really are into Odinism and they really do make runes. They mark on wood and on stone and all kinds of things. They make markings. So the thing is, when I saw that again marked on, I'm like, okay, so there were items that seemed to have no significant meaning left in different rooms. Most of the items that were left at the scene appear to be things that were probably in the residence. Law enforcement thought the scene had such ritualistic tones that they made a list of self-described Wiccans in the area. They suspected that the staging was perhaps to obscure the original point of entry. One of the victims had a medical device that helped the coroner determine that the time of death was between 1 and 4 a.m. on May 29, 2011. Law enforcement knows the precise time that one of the victims died, but have not released that. One victim had post-mortem injuries inflicted 2 hours after their death. Detective Coy Cox believes that the killer's intention was to kill both Bill and Peggy. This was premeditated and a double homicide. Based on the day and the time that the killer chose to commit this crime, knowing that the couple's absence would be noticed immediately by their community, law enforcement believes they wanted the crime scene to be discovered and to shock people, to be remembered, to make an impact. Detective Cox said that he believes the killer's motive may be related to a disagreement over correct Christian practices, i.e., their actions may be justified in their own mind. Did the killer leave non-secular items behind, as Delphi investigators have said in the case of Abby Williams and Libby German? DNA was found in multiple places in the home, all from the same individual. This DNA has not been matched to anyone in the CODA system, and Detective Cox said the DNA is not suitable for genealogy or phenotyping at this time. The FBI said that these murders seem to be the type of crime that is one of the 1% that reads more like fiction than reality. Phenotyping is generating a physical description of a person based on genetic material, and genealogy is attempting to identify the donor of a DNA sample based on family and population genetics. It's not clear why the sample is not suitable for these types of analysis, but may simply mean that it was a small sample. Remember, Bill had lots of connections to truckers, which means that hundreds of truckers across the USA have been interviewed in this case, which remains unsolved. Now, there was a time when the nephew was looked into, but his DNA was not found at the scene and he's not currently considered a suspect. So I'm going to move on from that. And so what is the possible link to the Delphi case? In November of 2022, which is right after Richard Allen was arrested, a tip led investigators to Indiana. Detective Cox said, "We had received some information from an individual regarding the Delphi murders in Indiana, and they had said, for all of these reasons, we believe it may be the same person that was involved in the Stephenson case." Right away, detectives said that they started looking into a possible connection between Bill and Peggy's 2011 murder and the murders of Abby Williams and Libby German in Delphi, Indiana in 2017. Now remember, the Evansdale murders took place in 2012, just so that you can add that to the timeline. So they said, and here we go, there's things that will make you really interested in a case. Simply more than just somebody saying, hey, we think this person might have been involved. But we had a little piece of information that really made that case specifically interesting to us, Cox said. The information pointed Boone County investigators toward a specific person who had a specific item they were interested in. I don't know what that item is, but it sounds very interesting. Now they expand by saying, I'm not going to tell you about what that item was, Cox said. We've recently been in the northern part of Indiana, investigating this guy, following him around, looking for things, collecting all of the information and evidence that we would need to at least vet him as best we could with our case. He was cooperative. We were able to go down that path with him, and he articulated good reason to why that item may have existed. The Boone County investigators have been working with the Indiana State Police and have sent the item to them. To be clear, Detective Cox said that the investigation into a potential link between the two cases did not include Richard Allen. So, while I totally understand why people would say, the defense is just doing their job for their client, Richard Allen, I understand that. But what if this defense team is actually pretty good? What if they are uncovering things in Delphi that are actually interesting? They might be uncovering some corruption. They might be uncovering some groups. They already have uncovered groups that do exist. It's not made up. If you didn't know what Odinists were before, I'm sure many of us didn't. Now you do. And if you look into the people they mentioned, they are showing that on their own social media profiles. They literally are Odinists. It's not some make-believe thing. They are. It does exist. I'm just saying there in Delphi, it exists. And in the surrounding areas. People are making runes. And while that doesn't mean necessarily that they are making sacrifices, especially not ritual sacrifices and double homicides, these groups exist. And so it's interesting, right? So they say, to be clear, one more time, Detective Cox said that the investigation into a potential link between the two cases did not include Richard Allen. The person they've been following around and investigating is someone else. Richard Allen was already in jail by the time that this item became of interest. We received information from Indiana as it related to some persons, and we forwarded that to them. We did not send them the information that led them to Richard Allen. We sent them information that may have had some parallel consistencies with where they are with that case right now. I know that sounds a little cloak and dagger, but I'm just sorry about that. We're not getting farther with that, Detective Coy Cox said. Anyone with information on this case is urged to call the Boone County Sheriff's Office at 859-334-2175. There is a $50,000 reward for information leading to an arrest. So, to summarize, if we look at Delphi versus the Stephenson case, similarities are double homicide, special occasion, sharp weapon used, no SA allegedly, a staged scene, possible non-secular items at the scene, few witnesses, no one heard anything, possible framing attempt by staging, could be more than one person involved. The killer knew that they would run into their victims at that time. And of course, they wanted the crime scene, the scene to be discovered. The differences are obviously inside versus outside, Sunday versus Monday. The victims were spontaneous, allegedly, in Delphi, versus routine in Stephenson. You know what I mean? The victims were going out to the Monon High Bridge spontaneously in the Delphi case, whereas the Stephenson couple, that was somebody knew their routine, clearly. Young female victims versus an elderly couple. Then we've got Delphi was somewhere around 2 to 5 p.m., but that's of course when the victims were abducted. We still don't know exactly what time they died, and I know there's a lot of conversation around that because they could have been taken to a second location, they could have been kept in a barn or something like that if there's more than one person involved. Stephenson murders were between 1 and 4 a.m. Delphi, photo, video, audio. Stephenson, no known video, audio, or witnesses. So that's a summary just between the two cases there. So, while I know that any content creator right now, even entertaining the defense team of Richard M. Allen, is getting a lot of flack online for it, I'll take it because I think, for me personally, I would not feel right about just shrugging it off and being like, they just whatever, and I don't feel like I'm contributing negatively to the case by talking about legal documents and what the defense has presented and actually looking at it and looking at what's plausible and what isn't. We actually have a live stream called that What's Plausible and What Isn't. What makes sense and what doesn't. And we went over all of that. So if you missed all of that, it's all on the playlist that is linked below for you. But I want to look at all of these details, no matter if it's coming from the prosecution or the defense or wherever it's coming from, right? Because there's a lot that's always been a little bit fishy about Delphi, about this case. There's a few things along the way that have made us all feel a little bit uncomfortable. And so I think it's worth looking at. And at the end of the day, we really want justice for Abby and Libby, for Bill and Peggy Stephenson, for Elizabeth Collins and Larry Cook, for the Flora 4 girls. You know about that case or not? It's also on the Delphi playlist. I think I've also got a playlist for the Flora Fire case as well. I think I've got a playlist for the Flora 4 as well, so please check it out if you've never heard of it. And trust me, that's a rabbit hole on its own. If you just look at the arson cases going on in Delphi and Flora and the surrounding areas, oh my word. So, I'm going to leave it at that. As I said, I'm compartmentalizing today, otherwise we'll be here forever again. This was meant to be a recap, a look at Bill and Peggy Stephenson's case, a look at why I think it's interesting that before the defense even came out with this memorandum, they talked about signatures, markings, staging, framing, perhaps even all kinds of words were said. I mean, the things that Superintendent Dakota also said was interesting. I mean, I know people say take what he says with just a grain of salt because he's a political figure and just, you know, he's like just speaking for everyone. He's very dramatic. I get that, but he said some interesting things along the way. The former prosecutor, Robert Ives, said some interesting things. I mean, it's all, to me, very interesting. And at the end of the day, we just want to know that there's going to be a fair trial for the suspect and that if there's anyone else involved, that they will also be held accountable. Right? If this is the only guy, if this guy did it, let him have a fair trial, and hopefully the trial won't get delayed too much because it seems like it might get delayed at this point. But then so be it. Great. Justice for Abby and Libby. If there's more people involved, okay, I'm glad now the prosecution is interviewing them again. They did that in August and September of this year, 2023. So they are looking at it again, obviously just making sure that they have all the information, the prosecution now that they need before the trial, and then the defense is very busy combing through all the discovery files and everything. So let's see what happens. Remember, I haven't been sitting here saying, this man is completely innocent. I haven't said he's guilty either because we don't know. He is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. That's what we know. So all we can do is look at the legal documents responsibly. Let's look through the entire thing as we've done, right? Like that 136-page memorandum. You can already tell who's read it and who hasn't really read it. You got to go through the whole thing, okay? And I don't think it sounds crazy. Some of it sounds pretty interesting and quite spot on for things that have been a little bit concerning along the way. Anyway, okay, I'm going to wrap it up now. I'm waffling. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like the way that I present true crime, please like the video. Make sure you subscribe, become part of this wonderful community. Subscribing is free. The best way to support the work that I do is just to watch the videos. Okay, so even if you want to put it on a replay or put the playlist on a replay, it really helps a lot. So thank you so much to everyone who does that. If you want to support in other ways, that's all on my website, grizzlytruecrime.com. You can just hit the support page and you'll find other ways to support the work I do. And also to support the moderators. You can buy them a coffee too. It's all on that page, okay? So leave your comments below. Remember, please don't fight with each other. Don't get ugly. Sometimes people get so combative in this case, you know, and just shut people's ideas down and make them feel really stupid. We don't do that over here. It's okay. We can have healthy adult conversations. There can be debates. And at the end of the day, we have to wait for the trial for more information to come out. Whether there will be cameras in the courtroom or not, or we don't know. I highly doubt it, but we don't know. The defense is fighting for cameras in the courtroom in this case. So we shall see. I will see you again very soon, and stay safe.